and welcome to today's almost daily devotion. We're going to be in the Old Testament story of Job, chapter 31, and we're going to start with 13th verse. And it goes like this. If I've rejected the just cause of my male or female servant when they contended with me, what could I do when God rises? When he requires an account, what could I answer? Didn't the one who made me in the belly make them? Didn't the same one fashion us in the womb? If I have denied what the poor wanted, made a widow's eyes tired, eaten my morsel alone and not shared any with an orphan, for from my youth I raised the orphan as a father, and from my mother's womb I led the widow. If ever I saw someone dying without clothes, or the needy naked, if they hadn't blessed me fervently, or if they weren't warmed by the wool from my sheep, if I have lifted my hand against the orphans when I saw that I had help in the city gate, may my arm fall from my shoulder, or may my forearm be broken at the elbow, for God's calamity is terror to me. I couldn't endure his splendor. Job. Oh, good old Job. It's such an interesting book. Job is probably the oldest book in the Old Testament. The story, anyway, is probably the oldest story. It existed in this form for the longest time. And we can tell that, we can guess that because of its form, the language that it's used, the vocabulary, that kind of stuff. And as such, it tells us of the very beginnings of how the Jewish people understood their relationship with the world as people of faith, as God's people. And what's interesting here is that despite all of the physical things, all of the calamities, all of the bad things that happened to Job, the loss of his family, his physical infirmities, the loss of his house and his job and all of those things, what Job is most concerned about is that God doesn't catch him being unkind. That despite all of the things, despite all of the effort and all of the ways God has allowed terrible things to happen, Job's biggest concern is that he continues to be a person who looks for the least of these first. Now, by probably any measure, Job is one of the least of these. He's lost everything, and yet he's still more concerned about the orphan and the widow who are helpless, who have nothing. And so what he's most concerned about is that God will not wake. God will not rise in the morning and see that Job has abandoned those who need him. And I wonder if sometimes we don't get so wrapped up in what our own losses look like, what we're struggling with that day, with our anger, with our downtroddenness, that we allow it to make us angry, that we allow it to make us hateful or hoarding or hold more tightly to what we have, that it allows us to not see the many ways that we are still blessed. Because the truth is that if you're born in America and you live in America or most Western countries, you're pretty blessed. Now, you may not have as much. You may not have a lot. There may be still emotional suffering. There still may be psychological suffering, but you're probably not going to starve. You may be hungry, but you're probably not going to die from malnutrition. You're probably not going to go completely uneducated unless you choose that path. And so we are so blessed. And yet we allow ourselves to become angry because we don't have as much as someone else. And maybe we can learn from Job that our loss, that our lessness, the areas in which we don't have as much do not have to make us angry. We can continue to care for the orphan and the widow even when we don't have very much ourselves. Choose kindness.